For decades, ancient Egypt has lived in our imagination as a land of golden thrones, sacred tombs, and pyramids that stretch skyward under the relentless desert sun. We think we know it. We've seen the movies, read the books, and watched the documentaries. 3 pyramids at Giza, mummies sealed in stone, pharaohs ruling with divine authority. But what if everything we believe is only part of the picture? What if those towering monuments were never just tombs, and the image of ancient Egypt we carry is just a carefully edited version of something far more profound? Because among the forgotten notes of 18th century explorers, in radar maps rarely shown to the public and buried deep beneath the sands of time, there are whispers of something else, a 4th pyramid. Made not of limestone or granite, but of black stone, harder than anything we know. A structure that may never have been a tomb at all, but a machine. A machine powered not by gears or steam, but by ancient knowledge modern science is only just beginning to rediscover. So fasten your seatbelt, because what comes next may reshape your understanding of Egypt, of human history, and perhaps of what we were truly meant to become. Our journey begins in the year 1737, long before satellites and drones, when the world was still mapped by foot and memory. A Danish explorer named Frederick Ludvig Norden was traveling through Egypt, documenting the land with pen and ink. He sketched monuments with remarkable precision and took meticulous notes on what he saw. But in one of his journals, Norden described something that no textbook today mentions, a 4th pyramid on the Giza Plateau. According to his hand-drawn maps and detailed descriptions, this structure stood isolated to the west of the 3 famous pyramids. It wasn't built from the usual limestone. Instead, it was made of a black stone, darker and denser than granite. Its surface was rough, with no casing stones, no hieroglyphs, no markings. And most curious of all, it didn't end in a point, but in a flat slab, as if it was designed to hold something important on top. Modern archaeologists have largely dismissed Norden's account. They claim he likely saw a ruined structure or a natural hill distorted by the setting sun. Others say he was simply mistaken, but there's a problem with that theory. Norden wasn't the only one. Several decades later, a French scholar named Louis de Brézé, working independently, with no connection to Norden, also wrote about a dark pyramid that once stood in Giza. He too claimed it was real. And he too noted that it had vanished from official records. 2 explorers, 2 different times, 1 forgotten structure, coincidence, or a piece of history intentionally erased. Because if this black pyramid truly existed, then what was its purpose? And why has the modern world tried so hard to forget it? Nearly 300 years after Frederick Norden sketched the mysterious 4th pyramid, modern science would unknowingly retrace his steps. In the early 2020s, a team of international archaeologists set out to excavate a region near Luxor, roughly 300 miles south of Cairo. Their mission was straightforward: uncover remnants of a lost city believed to have thrived during Egypt's golden age. They weren't searching for pyramids. They weren't chasing ancient mysteries. But what they found would shake the archaeological world. As the sand was brushed away, a vast city began to emerge, rooms connected by long corridors, everyday tools left behind, even molds used to cast golden amulets still in place, untouched by time. Researchers quickly dated the site to the reign of Amenhotep III, one of Egypt's wealthiest and most powerful pharaohs. The media dubbed it the Lost Golden City. But amid the excitement, a stranger discovery was quietly made, one that never made headlines. Beneath the city, far deeper than expected, ground-penetrating radar picked up something unusual. A geometric structure, buried and massive, with perfect right angles and a density that suggested stone, not natural rock, but a man-made block. No one declared it a pyramid, not publicly, not yet, but one detail stood out. When researchers drew a straight line connecting this anomaly to the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau, it aligned perfectly with the layout Norden had drawn back in 1737. That's not the kind of mistake an 18th century explorer just guesses right. Could it be that the structure Norden once stood before had, all along, been lying hidden beneath sand, beneath time, and now beneath our feet? And if so, why has no one spoken of it? Some claim it's a coincidence. Others say it's simply a misinterpreted radar echo. But a growing number of scientists, quietly and cautiously, are starting to consider a different possibility. That the Black Pyramid never disappeared. It was simply buried, and we're only now beginning to find it again. At first glance, Norden's mention of a black stone pyramid might seem like a minor detail, but in ancient Egypt, nothing was accidental, especially when it came to materials. To the ancient Egyptians, black was not the color of death, as modern cultures often believe. It was the color of rebirth. It symbolized the rich silt deposited by the Nile after flooding, the soil that made life possible. Black was also associated with the underworld, not as a place of punishment, but as a gateway to transformation. Every night, the sun was said to journey through the blackness beneath the earth before rising again in triumph. So what does it mean if a pyramid, a structure traditionally associated with ascension and immortality, was built entirely out of this sacred black stone? This wasn't limestone or sandstone. According to Norden and other fragmented reports, the stone was harder than granite, resistant to erosion, and incredibly dense. Modern archaeologists have found small fragments of this same black material in royal tomb complexes. But it was always used sparingly, for sarcophagi, for deity statues, for objects of the highest spiritual power. If an entire pyramid was built from it, that changes everything. It suggests the structure wasn't meant to honor the dead, but to transform the living. To this day, no one knows the full mineral composition of that black stone, but some early tests reveal a curious truth. Its electromagnetic properties are unlike typical granite. It is non-reactive, electromagnetically stable, and appears to have semiconductive characteristics under certain conditions. Some researchers have quietly speculated that the stone was chosen not just for symbolism, but for function. Because if you were building a device, not just a monument, you would need a material that could withstand intense energy, resist corrosion, and maintain structural integrity for millennia. Could the Black Pyramid have been more than symbolic? Could it have been designed to hold or channel energy? And if so, what kind of energy? For centuries, engineers and historians alike have puzzled over how the ancient Egyptians managed to build the Great Pyramids with such precision. The stone blocks, some weighing over 50 tons, are fitted together so perfectly that not even a razor blade can pass between them. No mortar, no gaps, just stone locked to stone in seamless harmony. Most experts attribute this to craftsmanship and ingenuity. But a few are beginning to ask, what if that precision wasn't just aesthetic? What if it was functional? Because when viewed through the lens of modern physics, the Great Pyramid begins to resemble something far more advanced, a structure designed not as a tomb, but as a machine. Let's look at the materials. Granite, used throughout the pyramid's internal chambers, contains quartz crystals, a mineral with piezoelectric properties. Under pressure or vibration, quartz can generate electrical charge. Combine that with the fact that the king's chamber is located precisely where the pyramid's structural pressure is greatest, and a pattern starts to emerge. Some theorists believe the pyramid acted like a giant resonant chamber, capable of harnessing vibrational energy from the earth itself. When you consider its internal shafts, angled passages, and the use of conductive materials, what you get isn't a tomb, but the blueprint of an energy system. And here's where it gets stranger. When analyzed further, the pyramid's geometry appears to match harmonic frequencies of Earth's magnetic field. That's right, the Great Pyramid of Giza may have been tuned like an instrument, not to play music, but to interact with the planet's electromagnetic grid. Now imagine this: if the three known pyramids form part of an energy matrix, then the fourth pyramid, made entirely of electromagnetic-resistant black stone, might have served as a stabilizer, an insulator, or perhaps even a receiver. A sort of central node in a wireless system far older, and perhaps more efficient, than anything we've yet imagined. Some researchers have even gone as far as to compare it to Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, a device designed to transmit electricity wirelessly using the Earth as a conductor. Tesla's dream was never realized, but what if the ancient Egyptians had already done it, thousands of years ago? Could the Giza Plateau once have been the heart of a global energy network? And if so, what happened to it? If the pyramids were part of an ancient energy system, the next logical question is, why don't we know about it? Why isn't this theory taught, researched, or even discussed in mainstream archaeology? The answer may lie not in what's been found, but in what's been buried, blocked, or silenced. Since the mid-18th century, no official excavation on the Giza Plateau has acknowledged the existence of a fourth pyramid, not one. Historical documents that describe four pyramids have either been dismissed as mistaken or quietly excluded from academic publications. Researchers who bring up the subject are often labeled as fringe theorists or pseudoscientists. But is it truly fringe, or is it forbidden? Consider this. In 2008, an international team of scientists began a ground-penetrating radar survey of the Hawara Desert, just 90 kilometers south of Cairo. What they discovered shocked even the most seasoned researchers: an enormous subterranean structure with thousands of rooms and corridors, perfectly aligned and consistent with ancient records of Egypt's legendary labyrinth, a structure described by Herodotus as so vast that no mortal shall ever uncover all its secrets. But within weeks, the entire project was shut down. Egyptian authorities ordered all findings sealed. Research data, 3D models, radar scans, all confiscated. The scientists involved were forbidden from speaking publicly, and the media coverage vanished overnight. No official reason was given, and this wasn't the first time. Throughout modern Egyptian history, there have been multiple incidents where major discoveries were abruptly halted, excavations delayed indefinitely, and foreign teams denied access without explanation. Some suggest this is just bureaucratic caution, but others believe it points to something deeper. Because if the Black Pyramid truly existed, and if it held secrets that challenged the foundational narrative of human history, it's easy to imagine why some powers would want it kept hidden. Imagine the implications: a lost civilization more advanced than previously believed, knowledge of electromagnetic energy, resonance, and wireless transmission thousands of years before Tesla. Evidence that humanity's past wasn't linear, but cyclical, rising and falling with each forgotten age. To rewrite Egypt's history is to rewrite the world's history, and that may be too dangerous for some to allow. If the Black Pyramid once stood, as Norden and others claimed, then its erasure from history is no ordinary oversight. It suggests intent, whether to protect, to control, or simply to preserve a secret too immense to share. One theory suggests that during the expansion of modern Cairo in the early 18th century, builders may have unknowingly dismantled the remnants of this mysterious structure. With no official records of its existence, no one questioned where the stone came from or what had once stood in its place. But another theory, one far more compelling, claims that the Black Pyramid was never destroyed at all. It was buried. Swallowed by sand, forgotten by time, hidden in plain sight, just beyond the reach of modern instruments and political permission. In recent years, satellite images have revealed geological anomalies in the western sector of the Giza Plateau. These are not natural formations. Their shapes, angles, and thermal signatures suggest something else, something man-made, still lying dormant beneath the earth. And yet, no excavation has been approved. No study has been officially launched. Just silence. Maybe that's what's most unsettling of all. Not the idea that the Black Pyramid never existed, but that it did, and the world chose to forget. You don't have to believe every theory to feel it. That strange weight when you look at the Giza Plateau. As if something is missing, as if the story isn't finished. Because deep beneath the sands, beneath the limestone blocks and shifting political lines, there may lie a truth waiting, a truth that doesn't just rewrite history, but rewrites us. So perhaps the final question is whether the Black Pyramid existed. It's whether we're finally ready to remember it.